Welcome to the show. My guest is Cheryl Cran, and we'll be talking about the future of work and what that means for women entrepreneurs. You won't want to miss that, so please join me when I come back. Welcome back to Women Rising. My guest is Cheryl Cran, and welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you, Catherine.
It's a pleasure. You are a keynote speaker here at the conference, and you've come all the way from Vancouver.
Yes, Vancouver. Well, Vancouver for the office and Sunshine Coast for my home.
I read about that in your book, actually, that you were making a lifestyle change to,
yes,
I guess, through 2020.
Yes, we lived in the city, so we lived right in the city and we loved it. And it was very, hip and happening and convenient and all those good things. And then COVID happened. And a number of things happened. So no more travel for me, for my business for a little while there. Mm-hmm. Daughter had her second child. So second grandbaby came along. And the oldest grandchild was ready to go to kindergarten. And so as two families, we had talked about where did we want to go next. And when COVID happened, it was like, oh, let's go now. And so we moved. And to get there is a 40-minute ferry ride, or you fly by Harbor Air, which is a float plane.
Oh, I hadn't realized.
Yes. Yeah. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think COVID brought that back for a lot of us. We looked at our lives and said, where are we going and why are we trying to go there so quickly?
Agreed.
Maybe we should live a little more. And I do think that comes out in your work.
Thank you.
Very much so. You have written 10 books, I believe. Yes. Can you just talk a little bit about that? How did they all happen? And it began early in the 2000s.
Yes. Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, this is interesting because we're talking about COVID, and my first book was right after 9/11.
Right then.
So September 11 happened, and I had been working for a seminar company, traveling probably about 300 days a year, speaking and training and doing that. And then 9/11 happened, and I went, okay, it's time to change what I'm doing, to write a book. So my first book was published right after that. I think it was January of 2002. And that first book was on communication. It was called Say What You Mean What You Say. And then once you've done one book, it's like anything. I make it sound easy. It's not, but it's replicable. You have a process. And that's the kind of way my brain works, is if there's a process, I can do it again and again and again, right? Similar to speaking, to be honest. I've spoken so many times, it almost becomes formulaic, but not, because it's an intimate exchange and it's customized. But there's a process. And as long as that process is in play, then
100% you can do it. And exactly, actually, I wrote my first book a couple of years ago.
Congratulations.
So following behind you, but I'm in fiction, whereas you are in nonfiction.
Fantastic. Well, no, fiction's an art on itself. So
it is an art in itself, and something that I always wanted to do and finally did. So you started with the first book, and were you expressing things that you felt in business that opened up to you that you wanted to share with people?
Well, it's interesting. I was speaking for a university in Alberta a few months ago. And then after I was speaking, there was an open student forum. They could ask me anything. Mm-hmm. And one of the students said, have you always been pro-AI? And I said, actually, I'm not pro-AI. I'm pro-future. And I've always been pro-future. So even when I started, because my background before starting my consulting firm was finance and insurance. And even then, I joined the bank at 18. And I remember my boss going, you're too innovative for us here in the bank. We're just doing things and I always had the ideas and the excitement for the future. Mm-hmm. And I can almost always see or sense the future, which sounds odd, I know, but and so for me, once I started the consulting firm, it was like getting the research to support what I sensed or intuited. And so the books have followed that. So the books were always inspired by what were my clients going through. And so the most recent book, which you have here, The Superficial Human, that book was out of the whole AI movement. So AI is not new. It's been happening for over a decade. But what I'm noticing with my clients is as technology has continued to increase and enhance things, it's actually created human-to-human communication challenges. And it's not generational specific. A lot of people, these young people, they're on their devices, they're never talking. Mm-hmm. It's not that. It's actually that our brains are being rewired based on, always accessible technology. And so the art of communicating human to human it's not being lost. I really don't believe that. It's more about how do we use technology as automating the mundane so that we can elevate the humane and be better humans, better leaders, better people. So if I look at all my books, they've all been sort of an evolutionary ladder towards this one. Is, you know, yeah.
And I felt that so much when you talked about it. You talked about ways for AI to work for the good, for the betterment. And my mind immediately was racing. Well, I can think of so many ways where it's not good.
Right.
And I can think of fewer ways where I feel that it will be good because, for example, as a writer, as someone who worked in public relations, AI could take over a lot of what I wrote through that career.
Yes.
And so how do we find our spot anymore? And how do we keep that openness and find our path through this?
Yeah, it's a great comment and a valid one, because one of the reasons I talk about AI is because a lot of people are afraid. So when you think of the future and you think of innovation, you have two choices: excitement and optimism, pragmatic optimism, or fear, right? And a lot of us go to fear. To your point, a lot of people in marketing, well, it's going to replace me. That, all the research we're doing, that's not proving to be true. It's very similar to when the internet was first, when it became, everybody was like, it's going to take jobs and it's going to do this. It didn't do any of the things that people were afraid of. And granted, the website has its good stuff and it's got its bad stuff, right? But for AI, what we're not hearing about in the media is we always hear the sensationalism. That's just the way it is, right? Yes. But what we're not hearing is the medical breakthroughs. For example, whatever anybody thinks about Ozempic, and I'm not a spokesperson for Ozempic and I've never taken it, so let's just be clear about that. The research, I just read an article in Maclean's in Canada here. The research has shown that what they've identified in that drug is also potential to treat Parkinson's, and the AI has discovered this. So what AI is able to do in the healthcare industry is take patterns and similarities in drugs and find them for other applications. And this could be game-changing for all of us for longevity and health. So that's just one micro example of AI for good. There's another company that I quote in the book out of Toronto where they do AI for children's hospitals. And they are literally seeking to find AI to help. Obviously, privacy is a concern, ethics are a concern. Factoring all that in, they're trying to find ways to help children, illness be solved faster, lower the mortality rate of children with illness. I could give you a lot of examples of AI for good. We just don't hear about it.
No, we don't. Not in the same way. And I had recently done a course with Tony Robbins.
Yes.
He talked a lot about patterns, looking for patterns.
That's right.
And a lot of what he's created through his empire has been based on patterns.
Correct.
And an awareness of what is happening. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that in your book. And actually, I highlighted a lot of things, as you can see.
Wonderful.
And I was like, I must ask her about this. But you talk a lot about being human. And I made a point to note that super, period, crucial, period, human, period. This is not running together. These are all separate entities that are brought together in a thought or a perception. That's how I took it.
Correct.
And so you talked a lot about being human and that element of what we feel, what we love, and what we bring, and being there in that way as leaders in business. Can we talk about this a bit?
Well, so I do a fair amount of consulting and coaching, and what I've seen as a pattern in my work is that leaders have been relying on a few things. They've been relying on autocracy. In other words, the top-down leadership model. So if I'm your leader, you should just respect me and listen to me because I've got the title of leader. So that's one pattern. Another pattern is you might be highly intelligent. You might have education, degrees. However, your people skills or your ability to inspire or your ability to just connect human to human are not there. And then thirdly, the social change with workers is saying, I don't want to work for leaders who don't treat me like a human being. I'm not a cog in the wheel. I'm not a means to an end. I'm not here to just make you money. I'm a real live human being. And so I found with the leaders that I'm coaching and helping, they're realizing, and it's through a number of things. Like I often say, to be a good leader, you have to be a psychologist. You have to understand people. You have to have a desire to help people. The best leaders have those two things, right? So for me, the book was really a heart, and I actually went out on a bit of a limb here because most of my work is corporate. I talk about love in the book.
You do.
And I talk about love not from the way that we normally contextualize love, which is, it's got to be romantic. I talk about it from a bigger concept than that, which is, and we've all had these moments in our life where we're inspired and we feel purpose-driven and we feel connected to something bigger than ourselves. It's not religious, and it's really just that tapping into, why am I here? So almost, what COVID did was raise that existential questioning of, why am I here? What am I doing? How much work is enough work? How much money is enough money? I say that I'm a family person, but how much time am I spending with my family? Like, it really caused all of us to reevaluate everything. And so the book was written during that time, right? And so it was like, how do we be better humans? And I'm thinking of a client I have right now in the insurance industry, and I've been working with them for 2 years with their senior leaders, coaching with their managers. And it's remarkable how they're now going, oh, I have one particular CEO who she's like, I used to always get so impatient with people when they had life stuff. She goes, like, it was getting in the way of my goals. And she goes, now, and she's completely done a 360, she goes, now, I was so proud of her because she had a situation that she handled brilliantly. And I said to her, you would not have done that 3 years ago. And she goes, I would not have. So that's just one example of bringing awareness in a way that's not shaming ourselves or blaming or feeling bad, but really just kind of going, what are my strengths as a leader? Like, what am I really good at innately? And then where do I need to be better as a human? And every one of us has an opportunity for that, based on our personality, based on our leadership style, based on our lens and how we perceive things, right? A big piece of being a better human is having multiple perspectives, the ability to see things from a variety of angles. In corporate, we hear a lot about, diversity and inclusion. That's an example of a perspective of seeing things through the lens of different culture, different gender, different religion. I take it another level, and I say multiple perspectives about personalities. I might be a driver personality. You might be more of a amiable personality. In the past, I might be more aggressive with you. If I'm a better human, I'm not. I'm actually pausing, respecting, listening, adapting to you rather than trying to get you to be more like me.
It's one of the good things that came out of COVID. It really reset us in many ways, where we had to sit down and look at things. And the people who came back to the office after that period of time were not willing to accept the same standards. That's what I felt. I mean, we had a large dental practice. And employed a number of people over the years. And I would think back, when I read your book, I thought back, how were we in those days? Because it was very inconvenient if an assistant didn't show up and the schedule was booked.
Correct.
How were we in those days? We were not the same understanding person that we would be today to look at it and say, well, these things happen. So how do we adjust? How do we prepare for this? And so it really made me think of that. And then, and I think of the younger generation that's coming out to work now. And I want to say, everyone will say, oh, they're never going to work. Their priorities are messed up. They're not going to have what we had. But they're going to have something very different, and it's going to be very different.
Yeah. And, when I wrote my book, 101 Ways to Make Generations X, Y, and Zoomers Happy at Work, I wrote that in 2009, published in 2010. And in that book, I talked about the different generations. And I actually said in that book that by the year 2020, we would be in a hybrid working model. Now, I did not predict the pandemic, but the reason I predicted it is the patterns of work from the generations was saying, I don't want to work the way baby boomers have worked. I don't want to kill myself with my work. I'm more than my work. My family is first. My identity is not my work. There was a whole bunch of different generational, viewpoints on work. Now, fast forward to 2024, and it's not true at all. We all have changed. And when you said COVID softened us, or those aren't your words, but I heard that in the background, it's like it did. It caused us to all pay attention to, because we were masked, because we had to distance, because we were more socially aware of each other, we had to be more cognizant of each other. And so it elevated, I think, humanity, honestly, to a level. Now, that's not true for everyone, but I'm saying generally there was this elevation that happened. And now, with this book, it's really about, so if we don't want AI to replace us, what makes us relevant? Well, what makes us relevant is if you are a good leader, if you can adapt to any situation, if you have resiliency and agility, if you are able to communicate in any circumstance, if you can inspire your teams, if you can understand why they're motivated to come in or to call in sick, or if we can elevate that, then we will become better humans. And then AI becomes our assistant. It purely becomes something that allows us to have more free time. And that really is the vision of where we're going with technology, is automate. Let's automate the stuff that we don't want to do as humans. A great example is farming. Years ago, I gave the example of they couldn't recruit young people to drive tractors. Well, now tractors are roboticized, and they have a lineup of young people who want to gamify and, roboticize the farm tractors, but didn't want to drive the farm tractor, but wanted to get involved in the technology side. So that's just one example.
Well, there are many examples that you have. And really to sit here and talk to you, it's uplifting, because I think we can get down the rabbit hole. If you read certain articles, if you listen, which I don't, to general media, I really don't.
No.
Turn it off. I want to find my own answers. But when I sit here and speak to you, and when I read your book, I thought, this is a way to look at it. And you can imagine, I often look back as an example when we were turning the year 2000 and everything was going to crash.
Yes.
None of that happened. And there were fears that this would fall out of the sky. And this is where we blow it up beyond what it needs to be.
Yeah.
And here we are, and you have this vision. And I think actually that you can see the future a little.
I appreciate that.
Yes. So
I was going to say, ultimately for me, this sounds very, lofty, but I really believe that we as humans are here to make an impact. And for myself personally, it's like, I'm here to elevate in any way I can. And so as a psychology, most of us will revert to fear, and because uncertainty is unstable, and therefore we don't know. And for me, I've had a lot of instability in my life as a child that I see now as a gift for being able to navigate instability myself, but to help others do that really successfully as well.
And you mentioned that you're coaching. How is this the majority of what you do with your time?
It's probably evenly aligned or allotted. I speak on average 1 to 2 times a month. I have consulting clients, which includes coaching. So with consulting, I'm involved in business strategy, strategic planning, and then part of that is coaching their leaders to help them align to that strategic planning. So I'd say it's pretty evenly, a third, I guess is how I would describe it. And then I also have a new project launching with a gentleman named Brad, who we're doing leadership retreats, because we do see, based on the concepts here of supercrucial human, it's called supercrucial leader, and it's aimed at attracting leaders who are really wanting to have an in-depth 3-day intensive on what does it mean to be a future-ready leader? What does it mean to be a human-centric leader? What does it mean to use AI for good?
Really, really exciting. And what's your message? I'm assuming this is going to be your message here for the women entrepreneurs of Newfoundland and Labrador, is to comment upon these things.
Yeah,
so anything you can share?
Cheryl, my keynote is, it's called The Future of Work is Now, Are You Ready? Part of it is sharing the trends. So, of course, AI is a trend. It's not really a trend. It's here. Yeah, it's here. But really talking about it from the place that I'm sharing with you, which is it doesn't have to be fearful. It can be very positive. And then I'm going to share a few models, which I do share in the book, around the me to we model, how we are shifted from the lone wolf and doing it on our own to a much more collaborative future. I think a lot of us are getting there, but I still see, we're here at an entrepreneur conference, and you still see people wanting to make their mark for themselves, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. The future is about collaboration and strategic partnership. So I'll be talking about that as well. And then also talking about the 4 C's, which I talk about in the book as well. What are the 4 C's that we need to be a future-ready, human-centric leader? And I won't give those away here, but I will be sharing those tomorrow. Yeah.
Are you seeing a difference? I mean, many of the people you work with would be mature, but do you have an opportunity to have the pulse? You mentioned being at the universities.
I do.
So, what are you seeing there? What are you feeling?
Yeah, I've spoken for universities quite a lot, actually, and recently just one in the U.S. and one in Canada. It doesn't always happen at the same time, but these two were back to back. Young people get super excited about what I have to say, because remember, they're surrounded by adults who are doomsdaying, right? So I had a number of students come up to me and say, it's so refreshing to have someone of your demographic excited about, eager for, and willing to apply it to business, and willing to have us apply what we know to the business. So they're eager for this. They want change. They want to see things change. I mean, you and I know that, and that's a lot of my work, is change leadership, which was, my book in 2015, The Art of Change Leadership, is really the future of work is about change. Mm-hmm. It's about helping people shift their mindset, helping them to lead the change to get to where we want to go. And so I've had many students come up to me and say, I wish my mom was here, my dad was here, I wish my boss was here, because what I'm saying, they're going, yes, this is what we've been trying to say. Yeah.
Exciting times when you think we are living through a very, very exciting time, rapidly moving, and those of us who move with it will feel much better and much happier. We haven't used the word next mapping since we have sat here, and I want to ask you about that. Can you talk a little bit about that brand?
Yeah, so Next Mapping is a brand. So, and in fact, Brad, the gentleman I mentioned who's my partner, he's actually the EVP of Believe Co., which is the branding company that I worked with. They were Zinc before, but they're now Believe Co. And I hired them because I had been doing my consulting and my speaking for a number of years, and I realized it was time to really take all of my thought leadership and give it a container, something that would be, marketable beyond my name. Because, I'm Cheryl Cran, but what's the brand? So I worked with Brad and his team, and I worked with them multiple times, but we came together and they came up with Next Mapping for me in 2017. And the way they positioned it when they presented it to me was, Cheryl, you're all about what's next. But yet you're not just talking about the future, you give people the tools to do that. And so that's where Next Mapping was born. And in Next Mapping, there's a book called Next Mapping, Anticipate, Navigate, and Create the Future of Work, which was published prior to this one.
Yes.
And it is really a framework. It's a framework of that mindset that I'm talking about. So it's all about crowdsourcing, ideation, iteration, pattern seeking, all those elements of what I'm talking about is if we're going to look at what's next, like everybody can be their own futurist. You can hire someone like me to inspire it, to jumpstart you, to get you going. But really, like you said, trusting your own research and trusting your own, that is also the sign of the future. If people are not just trusting, even for me when I speak on stage, I don't assume that people are just trusting what I have to say as truth. I know they're going to be fact checking. I know they're going to be Googling. So it's like being aware of your own knowledge, doing that. I support that. I think it's awesome. And then lining that up with, does that feel true for me? And if it feels true for me, then that's what's my next. So the Next Mapping is a brand, but it's also a process, and it's something that I use in the consulting and the coaching as well.
If someone is turned on and inspired by our conversation today, I know they have your books,
yes,
but where are there places that they can go to find more about you and more you?
Thank you, Catherine. Definitely LinkedIn. So I have just about 10,000 followers on LinkedIn, and I post regularly there. And then my website, nextmapping.com. I would also encourage anybody watching or listening to supercrucialleader.com. That's the retreats that I mentioned. So I've got multiple things going on. I'm a serial entrepreneur. In addition to my consulting work, my daughter and I opened a gift shop a year ago exactly on May the 4th. In our community.
As if you have not enough to do.
Correct. And so, but that project was really about my daughter wanting to, she's very creative. It was a good thing for her to be doing, but also together as mother-daughter, we just loved the buying together, the working together, and being in the community and building a place where people come and they always say to us, oh my God, it feels so good in here. It feels like love. And when I hear that, then I go, we've done it. We've done it. Yeah.
And you've relocated to the Sunshine Coast, which is kind of out there remote. A little bit. I don't want to say you're walking your talk. I do. I feel like you are to do that. You've taken time to sit back and
thank you
and live a little. Yeah. And I think we've all. I mean, I grew up on the tail end of the boomers, but I still had that in my blood.
Yes,
you have to. This is how we were brought up.
Yes, we were.
And for me, it was a big change to go through that metamorphosis and slow down and think, what do I want to do? I want to do what I'm doing right now. Talk to wonderful, engaging women like you, and to be in the center of a project like NLOWE brings to the province. If we can't begin to inspire and create and lift women up from patterns that we've been in, or expectations of what people have thought we could do, then what are we doing?
Agreed.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is super exciting.
We're going to figure out how to apply AI on this.
Yes, exactly.
To take away the mundane. I also just want to hold up a book here, which this is the NLOWE magazine, and it was mentioned briefly in one of our shows with Jennifer Bissell. And as part of NLOWE, they have a magazine every month that comes out and they feature, and you're featured.
I did not know that, but what a nice surprise.
I'm so happy to break it to you, and I'm actually going to present you with your magazine.
I love it.
It's my pleasure to do that.
Thank you so much.
But those magazines are inspiring, and they're all part of what NLOWE brings to women. And I know you've been with NLOWE on the province. I think it was in the 2017, you said, 2018?
Oh, lots longer ago than that.
Oh.
Yeah. It would be quite a while ago. The NLOWE person I was connected with was Christy Hoddenot. So whenever she was...
and I know the name, but I don't know the when. But But the good thing is that they had great ideas right from the start.
Yes.
And wonderful people and the right people. I just want to thank you so much for the time you spent with me. And I can't wait to hear your conversation tomorrow at dinner when you speak to all of us as a group.
Thank you, Catherine. And keep doing what you're doing, because having these conversations is uplifting for others. And I think it's an important thing to keep doing.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
A pleasure. Don't go away, folks. We will be right back. I'm sure you'll agree that was a great conversation with Cheryl. So please come back next time for more Women Rising.